Welcome to LeonCo and welcome to your weekly video, and on this week's topic we'll be discussing those alternatives that you can use to continue your studies, to continue your professional career without taking necessarily a student loan. So first of all, we want to divide this topic into things that you can do before you enter your college or your university career and after you're in the system. So first of all, let's talk about the things that you can do beforehand. Well, when you're in your high school, when you're in your 16 to 17 years old, when you're first starting to get that young adult responsibilities, you need to decide if having a professional career, if going to college, if going to university is something that works for you and is something that you want to do in your life. And if this is something that you want to achieve, then you should start working on to achieve that goal. For example, most universities give scholarships for academics, and that is something that you should explore, and that's something that you should exploit as a student. For example, in the university that I studied my first college years, and then when I'm continuing my college career, they gave me academic scholarships because of the things that I did in my high school and the things that I did throughout my college years throughout them. So having a scholarship that values your education knowledge, that values your education needs, that is something that you should always exploit. If you have good grades, if you keep your good grades and you exploit them, most of college will give you scholarships and will give you full rides because of this, so you won't have to worry about getting student loans. That is one alternative that you can use beforehand to get that professional career. The second thing is, most universities give scholarships to athletes, and that is something that you should consider. If you're an athlete in your high school, if you've been an athlete since a young age, you should work to get that scholarship from the university. You can get a full ride, you can be a student athlete, and you can get that studies done. That is something very important. If you do basketball, if you do soccer, if you do volleyball, if you do swimming, if you do any sport that the university that you're going to has a scholarship program, has a student athlete program, you should decide to go for that, because that will give you a great advantage when it comes to time that you can pay your studies. They could give you a full ride and you won't have to worry about having that financial burden when you finish your college degrees or when you finish your professional career. Another alternative that you can use, if you use an instrument. Most universities, not necessarily all of them, have a university band, and if you play a certain instrument, you can get a scholarship to play your instrument in the university. So these are tips that you can do, you can prevent, you can achieve, and you can be proactive when you're still a student in your high school, when you're still young, that you can achieve the works that you do today can help you achieve the goals that you want in your future. And that is something very important that you should do, because some of the scholarships that you can achieve when you're in high school and some of the scholarships that you can do, most of them is to exploit the things that you already do the things that you're passionate about, and those things can help you create a professional career. So we just talked about the things that you can do beforehand you get into college. So let's talk about the things that you can do when you're in college. So when you decide to go to college, and there are various alternatives that you can do. Most universities or most states, most countries provide students with an education program, with an education loans, with education financial help, depending on their financial situation and their economic situation. But if this is not your case, well, this is something that you can explore. For example, if the states that you're going to go to college, you can provide that you don't necessarily have that financial help that you need, and you don't have that financial stability, most states can provide you with some help for you go to college and get that professional career. But if this is not your case, you can use other alternatives that we'll be discussing as we continue. So other alternatives that you can use is that you can, instead of studying full-time, you can study part-time and have a job. And maybe this can extend your belongings in college, and this could maybe take you a couple of years more. You can assure yourself that if you study part-time and you work, you won't have to get all that loan, all that debt, and when you finish your professional career, you both have working experience and you will have that financial freedom to start your professional career without any debt. That is one alternative. This is not necessarily an attractive alternative, but this is a realistic alternative that you can do when you're in college. A second thing that you can do, instead of using loans, you can use credit cards. And credit cards is a viable option because credit cards have steady payments, and not necessarily like student loans that they get interest lately. Credit cards have a standard payment that you need to do, and they have standard interest that then necessarily vary, instead of student loans when their interests vary depending on what is the time and depending on the time that you haven't made your steady payments. So having a credit card is something that you can do, and something that can be necessarily helpful for you when you start that professional career, because if you take a credit card, and most big companies, maybe stores have credit cards that you don't necessarily have to pay interest for a certain amount of time. For example, the first 6 to 8 months you don't have to pay interest if you pay all of that money in between that time. And this is something that can be very useful for you, because maybe you can pay your first semester completely with that credit card, or maybe you can pay the full year, and then you have that extended amount of time from 6 to 8 months to pay all that debt between the time. And maybe if you extend a little bit of the time, you know that you will always have that steady payment, and that payment won't necessarily vary, and your interest not necessarily will go through the roof. Even though interest from credit cards are very different from interest from student loans, and they are necessarily higher than student loans, this is a very important alternative that you can use, because this is something that will keep you responsible, will keep you active with your payments, and will help you have that alternative instead of having student loans. So these are some of the alternatives that we wanted to share with you guys. This is something that you can apply. Maybe you can mix and match. Maybe you can use lots of them in combination. Maybe you can take a student loan and maybe use the other ones, and maybe you can have some extra cash, some extra money that you could use throughout your college career. This is something what I wanted to share with you guys. This is something that can be very helpful, very knowledge for you guys at the moment that you want to start your professional career, or at the moment that you are in between that mix in colleges and you don't know necessarily how can you continue your career and how you continue your continuous study. So I hope this video is useful. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave us in the comments below what alternatives of these you've used, or some other alternatives that you can use to continue your professional career. But always remember to have that king mentality.